Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. Are you guys ready for Xavier? Because that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I know I'm a little bit late to the party, but I want to take a little bit of a different spin on this because I am concerned about the way in which this will be obtained. I'm not necessarily concerned about the missions and that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that too, uh, but kind of like how G20 is going to be, and some things that I've heard, which I don't know if it's 100% true or not. I'll be honest, but it does change the way that we look at things, which will be much different than the G19 Mephisto era. So, if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. Okay, so you guys may or may not have already read this, anyways. The blog post from yesterday regarding the Xavier Saga, right? So they're basically doing a mixture of Apocalypse and Dark Dimension with this. They're saying that there's going to be bosses in the way that kind of Battle World is. There, the health bar here, you can see this looks reminiscent of Null. You know, when we're in Battle World, and there's going to be the submissions. I'll bring up the chart here, right? And so we'll just start here, anyways. And what's really interesting, I suppose, and I guess this is going to be the saga sort of thing. I assume, anyways, it's probably going to open up as a saga. There's going to be like 4 chapters, right? And then you can do them maybe in any order. I mean, I don't know if that, maybe I should have read it a little bit more clearly. But there's 3 different difficulties on each of these, so it makes it sound like you can do them in any order, I suppose, but they all have to be done, or maybe these 3 have to be done before you can even do Dark Xavier. And so the major traits that are going to be on these, though, are going to be city, villain global, hero global, villain cosmic, and hero cosmic. So there is just like a base cosmic, a base global, and all of that, and any on this. So this is going to be, this Nimrod section is going to be our introduction into the whole thing, right? And the bosses and how it's going to be before we get dived into the G19, G20 version of City and the rest of them. And even, in fact, actually, we're going to have an introduction for the Gladiator, Shadow King, and Dark Xavier section, because that's just G19. So there's about half of this we'll be able to do when it comes out, right? On April, second week of April, I'm pretty sure. Oh, hey, I'm going to be in Germany. Shit. It's literally, I think it's, you know what? Hold on. I think it's launching on the day that I leave. I'm just going to skip to that right now. No, wait, well, that's G17. April the 14th. Okay, so I leave on the 12th. I might not even be settled in by this point, so that's shitty timing for me. But I just wanted to check that out, anyways. But anyways, so there's going to be some missions, and then I guess like some node missions, right? You're going to go through that, but you need to 3-star those. So what's really important is going to be the survivability of your characters on these, and possibly on the boss as well. We're going to talk about that when we look at the characters and things like that. Not that I'm recommending anyone do anything right now, but just something to keep in the back of their mind. Now, it says that these are not like normal characters in your roster. What that means is it's probably going to be Battle World-esque. You're probably not going to be able to cheese them by turn bar rewinding them. I'm assuming that that's going to be a thing. They're probably going to be immune to certain debuffs to make it a little bit harder. Those are the kinds of things that I would expect from this. Multiple missions, and you'll need to earn 3 stars on every mission to access all 4 bosses to unlock Professor Xavier. So I guess leading up to the final mission, you're going to need to 3-star all of those things. It doesn't say that you need to 3-star the boss, though. So that's actually kind of important, because, you know, survivability will be key, which means that the characters that you choose, it can't be like a scorched earth approach where you just kind of, you blow through it and that's it. You're actually going to need to think about the characters you bring in, that they all survive by the end of the mission, or maybe the boss. It's not 100% clear. It seems to suggest you don't need to 3-star the boss, but you never know. Mission nodes will have specific trait requirements, which we have down below. Freedom to choose your teams. So theory craft your way. So one thing that I will say, just going back to the chart here, some of these are better than others, right? And I think some of them are going to be shoo-ins. And I want to look at that before I talk about the negatives that I have some thoughts on. But we know 100% that you're going to need to take Lalandra. So she's safe. I have her at 101, but honestly, I could just take her up to 105, and that's fine because I'm going to have to use her. So that's one character that is absolutely safe, right? There's going to be a total of 25 characters. So 5 in city, 10 in global, villains, heroes, and then 10 in cosmic, or 9 with Lalandra, I guess, villain cosmic and hero cosmic. And just for shits and giggles, I am going to run through this because I just want to see where we are right now. If you were to go in as early as when it unlocks, what would you be using, right? And city's in a really interesting spot because we haven't had a lot of things. And I actually think that if there isn't any material change in April, we may have vigilantes, but the problem is that they're going to be new characters. And even though we're in the new stat era, right? That the vigilantes outside of the reworks will not be farmable, and therefore their stats will be quite low at the 3 or 4 yellow level. Now, when the average person gets in, that's another question, but realistically, city is the first section if you want to consider it that way, right? Potentially. And if that's the case, you do also want to think about this in a dark dimension mindset, sort of that you want to kind of spread out your origins, right? You want to make it a little bit because I'm assuming that the event we'll talk about the events, but I'm assuming that the way that we'll get the minis is going to be, not in bulk of one, right? We're going to be like getting a little bit of everything kind of along the way. And so you don't want to stack too many of the same types of characters for this kind of like dark dimension. But as far as city goes right now, like if I were to go in today, it probably would be Blade, Oath, and the 3 new characters of Spider Society. Why? Because out of the older characters, Spider Society are the most consistent. Also, if I need to 3-star the nodes, I can rely on these characters to do what they need to do in terms of debuffs and healing and that sort of thing. I think Blade and Oath, I don't use Night Stalkers a lot outside of Sims, but they have some sort of drain, I'm pretty sure. And if you look at the options for everyone else, it is garbage. Even though you can use Legendary, I really can't recommend like Sinister Six or anything like that to the 105 G20. I just can't imagine bringing them up. Spiders, I'm at the point where like I can't really imagine anyone in the old era at G20. But if I have to say anyone, it would be Spider Society are probably the best team of the old era. That's just my opinions, anyways. That doesn't include a legendary of some kind, right? Otherwise, you would say Old Man Logan. But as far as a team goes, Spire Society, in my opinion, are the most consistent and well rounded. So I think that unless Vigilantes is the bee's fucking knees, then I think this is probably what we're going to end up looking at, depending on how many months it takes for you to get in. Right. So that's another thing, too, which, I'm not recommending anyone level up their characters right now to 105 unless you've already done that, but don't go out of your way to do this at the moment. Now, let's talk about global. Global is the most saturated, where you're probably going to find, at least in the global hero section, where you're going to find the most amount of characters. But ideally, once again, you want to kind of think about this broadly in the context of survivability, right? Your ability to 3-star the nodes because you can get through them. And I would actually see this as sort of like I'm thinking about like if I were to go in today or in April, right? I would go in for like an X-Men hybrid. There's enough that have been reworked and who have kits. Like we have Emma Frost X-Men, we have Phoenix, who, yes, I understand is designed to die. Maybe that we'll get back to that one, right? Like, so maybe I think her kit's changed enough that like she's not designed to die anymore. Old Man Logan, Beast, Capsam is an amazing plug and play, right? Storm. So yeah, maybe you don't need to use Phoenix. Maybe you could just use Storm instead. I kind of like Phoenix for some reason, but there's actually, what? Storm is very expensive to build. If I'm not mistaken, she requires 5 minis, I think. So that's probably off the table, right? You do need to consider some of this stuff with the gearing, right? And so most of these characters are pretty simple to build. Capsam's also skills, so that's not too bad either. But Old Man Logan, even though it was not required, that he's going to be really powerful in this. And you don't really want like Black Knight because he might kill himself because his tanking is so good that he's going to be the targeting of everyone else. But at least Cap Sam can kind of drop that, and he's not going to die forever. He's got a lot of deflect and stuff as well. As far as the other character goes, I don't really want to dip into the 1.0 era. I don't think I want to dip into that when it comes to these sorts of G20 characters, right? So Jean Grey, not so good outside of the game modes. So that's why I want to kind of take a look at these characters that are kind of better when it comes to, having not any particular game mode attached to them. And I think that this is this, right? I would think that this is pretty good. And Beast is going to have a lot of synergy for healing and sustain for X-Men related characters. So that's just my thoughts for that one. as far as villain goes, it almost feels like we're kind of stuck in the Orcus, aren't we? I guess there's Omega Red Dark Phoenix, but we're still kind of stuck in the Apocalypse Orcus scenario, which is very reminiscent of Dark Dimension 8 still. If we were going to go into today, there is the potential, of course, of Onslaught and the Dark Dimensions coming, Dark Descendants coming pretty soon. So that's a possible thing there as well. But by and large, as far as new era characters go, it's still like Apocalypse Orcus. So we'll have to see over the next 2 months. The only things I see on the horizon within the next 3 months, is like Dark Descendants, Liberty, Vigilantes, and Thunderbolts. Right, that's kind of what I see envisioning over the next 3 months. There might be like a one or two extra spattering of characters in there, but not a full team. Right, Dark Descendants very well could have some global villain characters in there though. But once again, just like I talked about Vigilantes, that they're going to be low stars. And maybe their survivability will be put into question to be able to clear these missions because that's going to be really important. So having characters that are farmable that you have diamonds on, so it maximizes their survivability, I think is going to be really important. And also, Orcus is pretty good in that. But once again, I'm not saying that people need to go out and build anything right now. They're also the current raid team, so that's not bad either. Cosmic Hero. Now, this is clearly obvious that you're going to upgrade Odin. And that's Odin is probably safe, right? Odin's safe. Cosmic Hero, Lalandra, safe. I think those two absolutely that you're going to want to do. Now, beyond that, I would probably take Kahori. I really like Kahori. I think that she's probably pretty safe too, I would imagine. I don't see a lot of things like downright countering Kahori necessarily, but her kit is extremely strong. She's also in the 2.0 stat era. I actually really like Groot. I'll be honest, I think Groot's support is very, very strong. So that might actually, I think Groot is very expensive to build, so that might be out. I think Groot might be a 5 piece. So that's going to be really important, right? I know Kahori's not. These newer characters are 3 piece, so that's pretty important as well. Invisible Woman's 3 piece, but again, I don't know if we're going to be getting any cosmic characters over the next 3 months. I think that we're kind of moving away from that, right? Thunderbolt's not really, Vigilante's not really, Dark Descendants, unless on again, that's more villain, right? So that's not going to be on the hero side. So I think this is probably likely it. So we might still see some combination of Odin, Lalandra, some Starjammers, Kahori, that kind of thing. That's kind of probably what we're looking at. But of course, I'd like to know like who's actually on the nodes before I kind of decide a little bit more. So in the meantime, hoarding is probably a good idea. So, and then finally, of course, we have villains, which I'm not sure if that's, we have Shadow King, right? Actually, we have a lot of the mythic characters, so that's probably going to be a shoe, and you're probably still going to have to do this. Mephisto, Shadow King, Super Scroll, maybe that might be a possibility there. I say maybe because it might depend. Null, we're going to be unlocking very soon, so a lot of this villain cosmic stuff is going to be within the mythic territory, and then we have Thanos Endgame, right? Gladiator may be a liability because again, that tanking thing that if you end up tanking yourself to death, that could be a bad thing, but we might have Mephisto and Shadow King to kind of help out there, so that might be okay. But other than that, you kind of see in the top row, this is pretty much it. So Shadow King, Mephisto, Null, Thanos Endgame, and like one more, right? Whether that's Super Skrull or Gladiator, that's probably going to depend on the characters on the node. You also might want to consider less minis, maybe more than, maybe you don't need Super Skrull, and therefore you could just bring in Gladiator or Gore because they're cheaper to build, that kind of thing as well. That's really important to keep in mind because we're going to be getting Null unlocked pretty soon as well. So those are the characters. Again, what I would do, what I personally recommend is what I'm doing is hoarding. Marvel Horde Force back in action. Whether it's your power cores, whether it's your gold, keep hoarding, and that way that when we have the proper tools to analyze what enemies are on these nodes, that we can kind of figure out whether or not any of those enemies directly counter characters that I've just said in today's video. Like maybe there's a huge Spider Society counter on the Signos, and that idea is completely scrapped, right? We'll know that pretty soon once we get the nodes in the data mines, that kind of thing, when we can kind of look at who's on them and have a better idea of like who's going to get hard countered, right? If you want to be one of those early people in, or you do what a lot of other people do, is just wait until somebody else goes in, see what's good, and then build that accordingly, or not build if it's crap, right? And the thing that I want to end on, though, is the events. We're in the hero's journey right now. right? I mentioned this in that video, but I want to mention it again here today. That there's just such a huge gap between top 1,000 and 1 to 3% and everything else. Now, I'm happy for all of these people down here in 4 to 10% and above that they're getting a little bit, but it's so garbage. Also, I wanted to point out Armory 17 fragments, absolutely garbage. Why the hell is that even there? Why can't it be like Armory 19? Nobody needs 17. Why the fuck is that in there? But anyways, that kind of pissed me off a little bit. One other thing that I also heard though is that we might, and I really hope this part's not true. And this is kind of what not pissed me off, but it made me sad. I don't know what the right word is. That I heard that they may not be available. The G20 minis may not be available in the supply store. I'll be honest, that's part of the reason why I've hoarded so much gold. Because I was hoping that I could buy them in the supply store and get myself ahead of others because that's what I did in the G19 era. So I saved a lot of gold within the G19 era, specifically designed for the supply store at the detriment of my roster. So I actually skipped a handful of characters here and there in the G19 Mephisto era because I used that gold instead on buying G19 minis. But what that did do is that helped me get ahead. That helped me unlock Mephisto without spending. Believe it, I know some people disagree or don't believe it, but I actually got Mephisto pretty early without spending. So my leaderboard ranking for this, I actually look, I didn't even know it was this high. I was at 1893, which I think is really, really good. It's in the top 1%, right? If we consider back then was like 3,000 or 1%. So this was a pretty good ranking. But the only reason that I managed to even get this far was because I hoarded so much. I was a serial hoarder when it came to gold. I put gold towards G19 minis. I had videos go back in time to around Mephisto. I had tons of resource management videos about spending it in the supply store, how much faster that would get you into Dark Dimension 9, that kind of stuff. Sorry, not 9, 7. And my concern is if they don't allow us to do this for the G20 era, then that kind of screws a lot of this resource management thinking, these kind of videos, these kind of thought processes about, how to use your gold effectively, that kind of stuff. So I really hope that that's not true. There was the fact that they brought up, of course, in the blog about the X coins, right? I forget where it is in here, the X coins store, right? But one thing that we know is that it's through events. What they have not said, and what I think is probably true, is that the majority of those are going to be locked into the whalestones. I think that free to play will get some, but not anything significant enough. They're really trying to push spending. I mean, that's clear with the leaderboards, but they're also down in revenue. Marvel Strike Force and Scopely is down in revenue a lot more than they have been before, like quite significantly so. And that's why they're gouging the player base to either pay up, through leaderboards, pay up through whalestones, that kind of thing, which we're going to see going forward. Upgrading characters, blah, 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 earn through events. Like, so I'm not even sure if they're actually even selling G20, but they're trying to auction it off through the leaderboards, through these X coins on the whalestones so that people can get G20 progress that way. But for most of us, it's probably not going to happen very quickly. And there might not be any way that hardcore free to play can push that, whether it's through your power cores, whether it's through your gold. It might not make a huge difference because the leaderboard's showing that there's just such a significant gap that 1 to 3% and 4 to 10% almost makes no difference at all. There's like a difference of 3 minis and it's just crap. In my opinion, let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Just wanted to give my thoughts on this overall, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you'll be greatly helping out the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.